This is the best. Oh my gosh. Welcome to BWI Live. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. I think. Nate, are we live? Are we here?
As far as I can tell.
Okay, so I hit the go live button. And then all of a sudden my screen said, hey, you need to reconnect to the server. Okay, so a little bit of a rough start here. Hope everyone is...
Let's work out the kinks before the football season, all right? Penn State football is starting preseason practices today.
Yeah.
You know what? There's gonna be miscues in their preseason practices. So
yep.
Let's follow their lead and work ourselves into game shape.
Well, it's a perfect way to start the show because what we're talking about today is basically a mulligan of yesterday's show. Nate Bauer, with about 10 minutes left in the show, had some things happen. And you know what? Here's what's going to happen. I am just going to give you the recap in dramatic fashion.
Previously on BWI Live.
But how do you want to handle this particular conversation of the expectations placed on James Franklin this year, where there is both opportunity and the newness of college football playoff expansion and Big Ten expansion? So, do they have to get it done this year, Nate?
Do they have to get what done? They only play Ohio State this year. That's the difference.
They're not going to be.
I think that this is going to be the best representation of James Franklin's standing against the overwhelming majority of his peers, of which Penn State has not been able to play the past two seasons. That's right. To me, in a lot of ways, the only games that James Franklin has differentiated himself.
Did we just get State colleged? So today, perfect start to the show, seeing how the show yesterday ended. Thanks, streamer.
So you didn't even make it to the two games.
No, Nate.
Can you guess what they were?
I was gonna say the two games that he's differentiated himself in.
The two games that he had an opportunity to differentiate. And look, I hate couching it as him.
Right.
Football isn't ever him for anything. It's not for a coach. It's not for a player. That's just if we're gonna call it the ultimate team game, of which the sheer scope and size of anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not a him thing. But in any case, what do you think the games were?
We're gonna. Before we get to that, I want to set up the show just a little bit as far as what's happening today. We're going to answer that question. We're going to talk about the pressure on James Franklin and Penn State football, because as much as we don't talk about these things in that context, we are going to kind of get into that today. Now, of course, when I couch the show this way of, hey, does Penn State football have to make the college football playoff? David Bortner before the show says, duh, next question. Okay. Well, that's the BWI Live show. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for being here. And then Russell Glover says, I gave you a preemptive like before the show even started. Don't make me regret that decision. So we've got dismisses and we have threats before the show. Guys, do you see why we don't talk about this stuff? Do you see your reactions and how it makes us on camera have this conversation in a different way when it gets so emotionally charged? But we're going to try and have this conversation anyway. Also, we're going to get to a mailbag question, and then at the end of the show, as a palate cleanser with all this stuff, we are going to talk to Max Granville, an unbelievably positive and fun individual, a 4-star Penn State defensive end prospect from the class of 2025 who reclassified to join the program this week. He spoke to us with an exclusive interview on Sunday. You're going to get the full thing right now. I wrote about it this week over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, giving you some quotes, some context. That's all coming up on the show today. So now that I have derailed us with the preamble, Nate, I want to re-establish this conversation. There is a certain perception of James Franklin, despite how we like to take shortcuts. We like to make things easy in our brains, that coach equals decision maker equals ultimate reason X, Y, and Z. A lot of this is on the coach for saying, hey, it stops with me. The leadership 101 thing says take responsibility and share success. But there is this notion nationally, Paul Feinbaum. This all started with Paul Feinbaum's comments where he just lobbed an easy grenade from SEC territory at James Franklin with this 10-2 conversation. Is there validity to it, and how do you handle that conversation and narrative around James Franklin heading into a year where there seems to be opportunity for Penn State to finally make the college football playoff?
A few things. One, the way that Paul Feinbaum phrased it isn't accurate. It's not the correct context of where Penn State has been over the last 2 years. Look, if you want to take it before that, that's fine. And I think 2019, 20, and 21 are kind of their own animal, that they stand apart. But yeah, the last 2 years has really been about the lack of diversity, I would say, in the schedule itself. The schedule itself has been limited to it was feast or famine, right? The only two games that they had on the schedule in the regular season for each of the past 2 seasons has been Michigan and Ohio State, of which no one would argue to the contrary that they were 2 of the 3, 4, 5 best teams in the country. And so you don't have that. And there was a distinct difference there, I think, in terms of the quality of those teams versus what Penn State was, which was very comfortably in that 8 to 12 range, right? Where are they? So would they have been in the playoffs the last 2 years? Yeah, of course. Would they have gone far? I don't know, but I thought very demonstrably Ohio State and Michigan were better positioned to win those games than Penn State was.
I would disagree in the only sense of this last year, where the context around the Ohio State game from a film level and from also a narrative perspective was that they were vulnerable. For the first time, you felt like Penn State, from a talent perspective, had an equal, if not greater, amount of talent across the board, and especially at key positions. And so they were the higher-ranked team. Ohio State was the higher-ranked team. They had individual players like Marvin Harrison Jr. that you couldn't account for. But Penn State was also in that game. They were also holding that offense to a certain number of points, and as we've talked about, the offense was not good enough to score enough points to win said game. So there is a feeling around that particular game for me of like, that was the game they could have gotten, and it didn't work out that way. I guess, do those losses erode the situation at all, or is it in the situation, just Ohio State, Michigan institutionally from the ground up were better over the last couple of years, and that's proven by the record in a sense.
Yeah, I think broadly speaking, and I think that your point is a fair one. And on the granular level, sure, you could say, okay, Penn State. I just don't necessarily buy that. I didn't see that out of that offense last year for Penn State to be able to say, like, okay, yeah. Was Ohio State vulnerable? Sure, maybe they weren't as well stocked as they have been, but was Penn State at that level operating at any point in the season? Did they operate at a level where you would say, yeah, you know what? I think this is the year that they're going to light up Ohio State's defense. I didn't see that. Like that.
No, that's a fair. That's a fair assessment. And the problem, like the context too of like light them up. They just needed to get some points. They needed to get some points in that game, and they could not.
Yep, and that's the rub. Is Penn State obviously had a defense that look. Counting on your defense to hold teams like that to 20 points is an unreasonable expectation. It's not. Yep. It's not fair for them, and it's just not how the game works. You got to be able to put more points up than that. Can we loop back to the top real quick?
Sure.
Like the actual question, the next question: does Penn State have to make the college football playoff this year? You're not going to like this, and this isn't a very me thing to say, but the answer is yes. The answer is yes for a variety of reasons. It is not that Penn State won't have an opportunity next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if they miss it this year, it's not as though they cannot win it or cannot get there next year. It is not that James Franklin will be fired after this season if they don't get there, right? If they finish 15, he's not going to get fired. They are locked into his contract. That's not changing. However, when I answer affirmatively to that question, it is about momentum for the program. And right now, if you look at this season in the narrative arc of everything that's come before and everything that could come after, this is a precipice moment. Okay. Yes, NIL will change. There will be things that are going to happen in-house. We'll discuss that in a minute. That will change Penn State's standing. It will help Penn State from a competitive standpoint in terms of players that it can afford. However, college football is a momentum game. Programs get momentum. They lose momentum. You have to kick and scratch and claw every step of the way to build it and to keep it. And to me, this is a point of, is there some faith of still getting it done? Yeah, internally, there's a ton of faith. There is absolutely. Penn State, the institution, believes that James Franklin's leadership is awesome and is able to get it to that point. Externally, within the fan base, within the broader Penn State community, yeah, there's questions. there's questions, right? And not just the flamethrowers after 2021 that were like, his record is whatever it was, right? 11-11 over the last two seasons. That was such a cheap argument and really lacked context. But can you say if this year turns out to be, let's say it's 9-3 and they miss the playoffs, and you go 10-2, 10-2, 9-3, and really don't have anything to satisfy your hunger, showing steps of progress, it becomes problematic.
You do stagnate
for next year and beyond.
Yeah. So there was a conversation of the 4-team era that we were having last year. This is the last time they have the opportunity to get into the college football playoff from the 4-team era, which means something. I always made the comparison of, as a Bills fan, I always wanted to beat Tom Brady. Winning the AFC East doesn't mean as much if it isn't going through the heart of the problem over 20 years. And they never got it done against that guy. He moved to Tampa Bay, and then it was over. Not making the college football playoff in the 4-team era, that is cemented now in history. It is all the other things we talked about, though, of unbelievably selective to a wildly disproportionate degree, as you have pointed out on this show. But it is also, it is what it is. And so to then not make it a 12-team playoff, like, there does become a stagnation and kind of an invisible ceiling that no matter what it is, there can then be a narrative, no matter what the threshold is, Penn State will be just below it. And you don't want that to creep in, because Penn State has momentum in 2026. They have the opportunity to have momentum at the end of 2025 with some players in the region that you feel like they could have a conversation with down the stretch in recruiting. So again, I don't want to go adjudicate the Ohio State game again. I don't want to adjudicate individual recruiting wins and losses, but as you weave the tapestry of all these events and these little attritions, to your point, it does matter. And so there is, I think, legitimate pressure for the team to make this college football playoff, but also a legitimate opportunity for them to make the playoff.
Yep. And I would say that internally, the sense that I have of the program is it is absolutely a pressure cooker. It is like not a or else situation necessarily, but hey, the stars have a lot. Like, there's this comment in the chat from Franklin Fanatic. It has all kind of built to this. There have been ups, there have been downs, but it has built to this point. I mean, I looked at it yesterday and wrote about it. This junior class of this class of 2022 guys, they're not going to be here next year. They're not going to be in Penn, right? Yeah. Like some of them will, but some of them definitely won't. And if you're looking at how you're defining this team, there are many ways that you can look at this team and define it, right? You can call it the 6th year guys who came back on the defensive line. Certainly there are a few underclassmen who will contribute and be part of the mix. But you cannot look at that junior class and see anything short of 12, 13, 14 heavy contributors, right? Yep. Guys that had all the expectations in the world. Like, this is it. This is it. This is that moment. Abdul Carter's not going to be at Penn State next year. Nick Singleton's not going to be at Penn State next year. Those different, right? Drew Aller may or may not be at Penn State. It kind of depends on how this year goes. But all of it is about this year and getting over that hump. Will there be complaints if Penn State gets in as the 11 seed and loses the first game? Of course, you're going to have people who will argue about stagnation, but I don't think does that is how it will ultimately be perceived to the broad public.
Yeah, is that I have a hard time with that. Again, kind of feels like moving the goalposts of you have to make the college football playoff, and then suddenly you make the college football playoff, and that wasn't good enough either. I understand the ultimate goal. There is no moving the goalposts. It's always national championship or disappointment for some people. But if you're talking about a journey and a progress of getting to that point, unless you have an unbelievably magical season, it doesn't necessarily work that way, where the stars align and suddenly you have the 2019 LSU Tigers, where they are one of the best offenses in college football that we've ever seen. I mean, that's where you get one of those like pop up, win a national championship, and then LSU goes back to being a team in Penn State's tier. I don't know that Penn State is going to be that this year, but they can absolutely make the college football playoff and be the same thing that they have been this whole time, Nate. A good football team that whoever they play, they're going to be competitive as long as they have the players on the roster that we expect.
Yep.
A la bowl games.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the one part of that Feinbaum phrasing that stuck with me, and it generated a few thoughts overnight, was this notion of expectations, right? Penn State fans expect excellence. Well, a few things, right? Fans are they don't have necessarily the influence that I think they do. And two, and hey, tough love time. You can't expect things that you don't work for. You can't,
from a fan perspective,
for sure. For everything, right? Like you see the teams that Penn State is trying to compete with, or you want to consider them a part of that. Georgia, forget the Big Ten. There are other programs that are positioned and have been positioned to compete at that level for quite some time. In an honest look at the mirror, does Penn State football institutionally and the community around it, its support system, its donors, do they act like that? Nope. No, they don't. If you're talking about internally, Ohio State made public over Big Ten Media Days that their roster spend is $20 million.
Wasn't it like 13 a couple years ago, and suddenly it's 20, and that's how this all works? Is there's an inflation every single year in a competition? Let's put a pause on this particular part of the conversation, Nate, because it dovetails perfectly into our mailbag conversation that was supposed to be for you yesterday. We didn't get to. David WG asks, how does Penn State bringing NIL in-house change this equation for recruiting, and is it simply a money issue for Penn State? So we've talked about this. You brought this conversation up, I believe, with Pat Kraft. Did we talk about this with Pat Kraft? What's your read on how things are playing out on that perspective? Do you have more hope in the positive for Penn State fans with some of the recent developments?
Yeah, I do. I think it will differentiate Penn State in terms of the revenue programs out there versus the ones that have a big time donor, right? If you look at the things that different, like Penn State's revenues as an athletic department are massive. They are massive. And you can argue, okay, you got to pay for a lot of things to have those revenues, which is absolutely correct and true. There is still a place of distinction where it's like, hey, yeah, Penn State is going to make a lot of money continuing. Well, it will continue to make a lot of money. It's going to have to make some tough choices about how to divvy that off and spend on its football program and player compensation. But I think that it will eliminate some of the recruiting losses that you're seeing to the middle of the pack, right? It, like some of the ones that Missouri, for instance, Missouri's revenues aren't that huge. They're not that big. And when Penn State can kick that into gear where it can use its own revenues, its own corporate sponsorships, whatever, to funnel money into a pot that they then use to compensate players, it'll fix things. It'll make things better. But there will still be an issue with Ohio State, because Ohio State is making the same amount of money. Michigan is making the same amount of money in revenues year over year as Penn State. So there's still an issue on that end, but I do think it will draw back some of the more competitive aspects that are happening from the bottom nipping at Penn State's heels rather than Penn State nipping at the heels of those in front of it. That is still a mountain to be climbed. Whereas I think the ones that are nipping at their heels are probably going to fall away a little bit.
Yeah, so Eggman says, I tried to psychically will Matt Zollers to Penn State. Then I realized fans don't have all that much influence over these things. And I think Nate kind of nutshelled there those situations. But to kind of bring it back all to the same point, Nate, you don't want to allow a team like Missouri to make the college football playoff over a team like Penn State, who has been there on the cusp of the mountaintop this whole time. And suddenly, you don't do the things necessary to get into the college football playoff, and suddenly Missouri takes a step forward. These program building moments do happen over time, and money and influence have kind of entrenched these things where it was probably easier back in the day to create a football culture and a winning program through, traditional means. Now it feels like there is a certain amount of gatekeeping that happens because of the money and the top heaviness of football. But it is not a completely enclosed ecosystem. There are still 65 teams that theoretically have the chance to make a playoff. So if you're Penn State and you feel like you're next in line, you can't let a team like Missouri, as an example,
and Missouri's not the only one. Yep, Missouri's not the only one. There are others out there, and they are fighting, and they will outspend you to prove a point. And that's something that Penn State's going to have to figure out.
So we'll see how all of that happens and shakes out over the next several months, but it starts today. Training camp happens this evening. Nate Bauer and myself, Sean Fitz, will be at camp to give you our look into practice. Make sure you subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on the YouTube channel if you're not already, because we're going to be giving you practice highlights and our literal view of camp, but also subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Code PSU1, 2 months for $1. That's our special offer for our YouTube and podcast listeners, because the good stuff, the info, the things that Nate is seeing, the things that Fitz is seeing, and they're putting into context for you, that happens at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Code PSU1, 2 months for $1. Sign up, you get all that inside access all the way through the beginning of the season, the first month, to see, like, hey, do I like this? Do I like Blue White Illustrated during the middle of the most important part of the Penn State sports calendar? Then you can sign up for the full year. Or you can just go right in, Nate, and do it right now. So give a preview of what you're seeing tonight. What are you interested in finding out with our first view of training camp this afternoon?
Who's there is always the biggest. Right?
Yeah.
It's there's always the right, politically, it's always an October surprise. There's always a July 31st surprise out there or two to be aware of. So first things first is just running through the roster and making sure all the numbers line up. Right? Is everybody there? Yes, no. Where are they? So that's a big one. After that, I think you just get a sense of the vibe, right? It's let's be honest about this. The things that we find out will be found out in the future right? As
Right.
camp progresses,
Right.
right? This is a slow build because
What do
there
these
aren't
context clues mean once we get more of them?
correct. And
Yeah.
and also look, like I did a piece today, right? A week ago today about guys who were making moves in the offseason, guys who had really changed their bodies, guys who had done some things that, there was kind of some inside intel type of stuff. I expect those things to carry over into the start of preseason practice, but the storylines change through the first 10-ish days, 10 to 14, right? Once you get to day 10, 14 of preseason practice, you start to see who is winning a job, right? Who is asserting themselves, who is falling off, and really what this team might be made of. So it's going to be interesting, and today is kind of the first piece of that.
I find it interesting that we find out things in stages. So, for me, people keep asking me, what's Andy Kolnicki's offense going to be like? What are they going to do? Bo Prabula, how's he fit in the offense? What kind of systems or schemes are they running? And the point is, he can run just about anything he wants within his system because he fits the system to his players. So we'll kind of find out. Now, of course, what's the percentage of running quarterback with Drew Aller, who is mobile but not, Bo Prabula and even Sean Clifford level mobile. But at the same time, we saw them running option plays in the spring, and that's like, okay, so that is a tone setter for this team in the future. Defensively, some of the things I find interesting is, where is Abdul Carter? We're not going to see some of the more important things to me. Like one of the things I brought up on this show a couple weeks ago is, did the plan work where they simplified the transition and made the language similar to last year so they can install things quicker and guys pick it up, and you eliminate the, what am I supposed to do during the offseason? That all matters now, today. All of that stuff they have to hit the ground running so that they don't have those first month oopsies of running the wrong route or having the wrong coverage and busted coverages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They need to know what they're doing now for all of that to have been really to hit a home run in that transition process. But we see not that part of practice. We don't get to see that part, Nate.
No, but we get to hear about it.
We do.
Anyway.
I'll definitely be asking about that after one practice during Media Day this upcoming weekend, which, again, subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on the YouTube channel. You get James Franklin's full comments. I will be asking, hey, it's been like 4 days of camp, but how's that going? How's that going? Nate, thank you for your time today. This is always a good time when we get to talk about these things and hash it out on air. So I appreciate you being here.
Love it. Thanks for having me, buddy.
So what we're going to do here is there's going to be a clunky, awkward transition because of what we're doing next, Nate, and I'll just make sure that you don't have to be a part of this. We are going to be talking to Max Granville. He is the 2024 defensive end who joined the program as a reclassified athlete. That news broke from Blue White Illustrated earlier this summer. And then Max, actually, it was like last week, then Max sat down with us for a conversation this past weekend. So we are going to get you that conversation right now. Normally, I would have this all ready to go. It would be super simple and seamless transitions is what I aim for. But every once in a while, the software doesn't allow for that. Freshmen are about to enroll in college across the country. From Penn State to California. Not all of them, though, make the announcement that they're doing so a year early and enrolling to play football all at the same time. But Max Granville, getting to know him a little bit here, seems like he's a guy that's built a little bit different. He's joining us here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube show. So, Max, thank you so much for the time during a very busy part of your life. So I really appreciate you joining us here on the show.
Yes, sir. No problem. I'm happy to be here.
So, like we talked about, a big decision to enroll early, to reclassify from the class of 25 to the class of 2024. What ultimately made you decide to do that?
A couple different things, but I would say the main thing is just the great opportunity there was in development to come early. I feel like I was able to prove myself a lot in high school, and I was ready for the next challenge, next step. I'm really grateful for the time I had in high school and everything I was able to do on the field and the competition I got. But I feel like going to Penn State will be even better for me going against college athletes, being in that strength and conditioning program, all of that. I hear some people talking about, well, he should have just done another year. He's probably not going to play at all. But I don't look at it that way. I'm going to be like in one of the best football programs in America. And whether I play a lot or just play a little bit, I'll be happy with the development I'm getting because I know I'm going to utilize all these high resources, these great resources at Penn State.
Yeah. So what are your goals for the first year? Because that is a part of the conversation too, is, not just coming into this as a guy who is reclassifying, but also into a very strong position on the Penn State depth chart with a lot of guys that I imagine were part of the reason you wanted to go to Penn State was the success they've had at defensive end. So what are your goals? What do you want to get out of this first year coming to Penn State?
As far as like on the field statistics or anything like that, I don't have any goals, but
okay.
My main goal is just development. And I know people throw that word around a lot, but to me, that just means getting better every day. Whether that's in the film room, I have a lot to learn on the defense, and in the film room, like building those habits. Those are not quite as strong as my on the field traits, but in the weight room as well, putting on lean muscle, getting quicker, faster. And then hopefully a year from now, I'll be ultra ready to get on the field. But let's see. If you want a specific goal, I'd say things like maybe getting to 230, like all muscle, or 235, wherever I can get while getting faster and stronger. And then besides that, nothing specific.
Oh, nothing. Just improve in every single area and 10 pounds of lean muscle in a year. I love it. Nice. I love that you've got the broad goals, but you've also got all this dialed in. And this really kind of is what I'm getting the vibe from you. Is this feels like a very mature decision. You seem like a very mature young man. So how much work has gone into getting you to the point where you could make a decision like this, and how much of that, I guess, how focused do you feel you are on those goals?
Mm-hmm. So I was a pretty good student at Fort Bend Christian Academy, not like a scholar or anything, but I was able to get a lot of classes done. And so that put me into the position where this summer I only needed like 3 or 4 credits to finish out my NCAA requirements. And it was something like I had talked about with multiple schools, possibly reclassing, but Penn State was the school I ultimately chose. So that's how that worked out. And then how I would describe my focus, I'd say I'm pretty dialed in. Like, honestly, I've been like ready to come. I've been really excited because of all the resources I'm really utilizing, like the cold tub, the training room. I'm gonna be in there all the time, just stretching, rolling out, getting better. So I'm really focused. I'm gonna be locked in. I'm gonna still have fun, but I'm gonna be real locked in.
So you're looking at all of the things they have, and to put it as in a fun way, but all the toys that you can use to make yourself better, all of the different things that you can leverage to improve. You see that as something you don't want to wait to get to. You want to be able to get into the strength and conditioning program with Chuck Losey, and you want to get a head start, is what it sounds like.
100%. Like, I kid you not, I've been daydreaming the past couple of weeks, just thinking about like being in the facility after practice on the pass rush dummies, working on my spin moves, getting on the hoop, working on my bend, then going to the training room and stretching out my hamstrings, stretching out my calves and ankles. Like, that's something I've been thinking about. And obviously you can do that in high school, but the resources are just another notch, like another level at Penn State.
And it sounds like you're not going to have a hard time hitting the ground running from a mentality perspective, but arriving when you are on campus to an established team pretty late for what they've been doing in this process kind of feels like jumping into the deep end right away. How do you feel about the timing, and how have you thought about any of those things, how you prepare for just getting to know your teammates and finding your way through that aspect of enrolling at Penn State?
Yeah, I think the timing was good. Obviously, it's not like completely ideal. Most people want to come at the beginning of the summer. If they do come, like in that fall, to summer to fall type window, but I'm gonna definitely make it work. So I'm moving tomorrow. I'm gonna meet all my roommates. I'm definitely get to know the guys, and then what was the other part of the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, just how are you planning to navigate through, I guess, getting to know your teammates and finding your place kind of on the social side with an established team that is already on the marching path with training camp? Like, this is in a lot of ways the final step of preparation for the season, and you've got to find your way in, I guess, on that side. So I guess, have you thought any way about any of those ideas and trying to make sure you get in and assimilate as quickly as you can?
Yeah, I'm gonna be like as warm as possible, like saying hi to everybody, getting to know them, sitting with different people when we eat or whatever, and then on the field, just building that chemistry, whether that's scout team or whatever type of practice setting we're in, just getting to know them, building that chemistry with like communication on the field, and I think I'll build respect for my teammates just with how I practice, how I work, how I go about my business. So I'm not worried about that. I think I'm actually very excited to build relationships with my teammates. Very excited.
We're speaking here with a four-star defensive end in the class of 2024 now, Max Granville. And I want to know the relationship you have with Deion Barnes. How much did he factor into this process from commitment to reclassification? And you've mentioned wanting to get better every single day and work on all of your craft and all of those things. How much is he a part of that? I know that might seem like an obvious question, but how much is he a part of what you want to get out of this first year and what you want to get out of Penn State?
He's been a huge part of my recruitment and part of my decision to come early and come to Penn State. I've always just been impressed with him. He's an interesting guy. Like, most coaches, they try to act like extra outgoing when they come meet you. When Coach Barnes came and offered me the spring of my sophomore year, he was just like, "Hey, what's up? We're going to offer you a scholarship. We'll get on to you as soon as possible." And then that was it. I went back to class, but so he's a real serious guy. It seems like he's got a cool side to him, but he's competitive. He's gonna get on you, which I love. I want to be pushed. I want to be coached up, and you can see from just his knowledge about the game in the film room and him showing me what he's done with the edges so far.
There is a conversation of like just seeing Deion Barnes and having interacted with him a couple times. He is a very serious guy. And like even in photos, he doesn't smile a whole lot with recruits and pictures and stuff like that. And it is an interesting personality, but he seems to be a guy that's dynamic on the recruiting trail and seems to speak to someone like you who is very serious and wants to get better and craves, I guess, that sort of understanding and relationship. So how quickly did you take to him, and how much of that are you hoping to get out of the technical side with him? Because having seen him coach, I feel like he imparts a lot of knowledge of the game to young guys. So how much did that draw you to him of his understanding the game and kind of the deeper river I think you're talking about underneath the very serious tone he has?
Yeah, it was a huge part. Like his knowledge of the game, how there was a video on Twitter that came out during spring ball with him mic'd up, and I was able to see up front, because I never went to a practice. I was able to see like how he coaches and the type of drills he does with them. And he's explained certain things to me. Like when we were on the phone, he always used to ask me, like, "You have any questions?" And I would be like, "Yeah, this certain school is saying this. What do you think about that?" And because a lot of schools kind of they want me to play more in the box or more of a hybrid linebacker, and
right,
they would kind of like, I don't want to say negative recruit, but kind of steer me away from Penn State because I'm pretty much a true defensive end here, and how that would impact my draft stock basically. And then he completely explained it. He was like, he just explained everything. Like we do the same things. We go through the same principles. Like that's not going to be an issue here. And so that showed me, okay, he knows what he's talking about. Like I trust him. And going along with Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, all these people he's put out, it showed me like he's a great coach.
Yeah, actually, I want to talk to you a little bit about your game. Throw up some of your film here. I'm a fan of the way you play football, and I want to ask you something. I'll set this up, and I'll try not to talk too long. But I've watched a lot of athletes who have your skill set, your speed, your explosiveness off the edge. They can almost opt out of contact at times because they're so athletic. So I want to ask, how intentional are you in the way you play football? Because it seems like you seem to play with a purpose instead of just winning and dominating. There's things in your tape that seem like you do things intentionally. Is that true? And do you feel like you play with a plan and a purpose at edge?
Yeah, I train very specifically, very intentionally. Like everything I do in my training, my dad's helped me out a bunch with that. From the different pass rushing drills to what we do when we're lifting, there's always a purpose behind it. And I train so hard, I train so often. When I get on the field, that stuff is second nature because I've been doing it all week in practice. I've been doing those movements all week in the weight room. And so when I get on the field, I'm able to just play free. I'm not overthinking anything. I'm really just playing off instinct and my athleticism by then because I've been doing it so much.
How much do you think about setting up, and you kind of answered this, but it's something I've noticed in your film. How much do you think about setting up tackles with different rushes, whether it's, a long arm for speed to power, a bull rush, inside move? How much are you thinking about chaining those moves together in a game, and how much does it happen kind of intrinsically?
I think about it a good amount. Say I've been hitting the tackle with an inside move a lot, and I've been beating him like the whole game. Well, now I'm going to set up a jab and then go outside on him. So it's really all just a mind game. Yes, you definitely want to pay attention to his feet and what type of set it is because that's going to tell you what you need to know about the rush. So if his shoulders are turned, I can probably speed rush or long arm him. If he's just jumping out at me real quick, then I can go inside. So, part of it's reading for sure, but sometimes – you just gotta toy with him, my bad, and play mind games. Pass rush is a lot about deception, and I feel like I've done a good job of that up to this point. But I have a lot to learn.
So I want to ask you about that. Where do you think you need to improve?
Definitely need to keep improving in the run game. Kind of keeping a little bit of a wider base. Hand placement is huge for me. I've been learning more about that. Like, you never know how much hand placement can determine like your power when you strike someone. Because if your hands are a little off, it's not going to be as powerful as a blow. But if you can get them right in his pads, man, you can deliver some big blows. A lot of it's all about leverage, like the angles of the O lineman, and you got to take advantage of that. So that's something I've been working on and will continue to work on. Need to keep working on my speed. I have a really good get off, but my top end speed needs to keep improving. And I think Chuck Losey and them will definitely get me right, get me to hopefully 4.5 or lower by the time my pro day rolls around.
How much? Yeah, that'd be pretty good. And the track record of Penn State's development program suggests that's entirely possible. What do you think is the most underrated part of your game? On the flip side, something that you're really proud of that maybe because you're a well-known recruit, and I think a lot of people know your strengths and what you're good at. What do you think is underrated when you've heard other people discuss, how you play? What's something that you don't think is brought up enough?
I would say my motor, to be honest. I feel like people talk about that more from a pass rushing standpoint, but I'm speaking on this more from if the play's away from me, I'm not going to give up on the play. I feel like there's a lot of plays on my film where I'll be on the opposite side of the ball, or it could look like the play's over, but I take pride in not giving up on the play and running back down or whoever it is. There's one play specifically, I'm going to have to send it to you after this. I think it was freshman year, and the running back on the other team went for like a 70-yard run, and I took off, and I was able to like help get him down. So that's something I think people forget about sometimes, but if you can get everybody to play with that type of motor, your defense is going to be a lot better.
How much, to go off of other things from your film, how much is physicality a part of your game? Because I know you mentioned some schools were thinking you could play a hybrid position, a linebacker position, but for, and this is rich coming from me when you're twice my size, but somebody your size, you're very physical on film. So how much of that is a part of your game, and how much is that intentional where you're actively making that a part of what you want your DNA to be?
I think physicality is definitely a big part of who I am as a player, and I want to keep increasing my physicality. I think I've shown a lot of violent plays on film, but I can think of a couple plays in my head where I can work on that. And so I know I definitely have the hit power and the mentality it takes. It's just continuing to remind myself of like playing physical. And obviously I'm going up a level now, so getting stronger is going to play a part in that. But a lot of it's the mentality, just really being violent with it, not being afraid to hit people. And I'm excited for that. Like, that's what I love. I love big hits on quarterbacks or running backs. That's probably my favorite. My favorite highlight in high school was probably just the big hits. Like, sacks are cool, but if I can get a nice big hit on someone, that's my favorite.
Want to get to know you a little bit more, Max, from a personal level. So we're going to talk a little bit about you, your family, some of that stuff to end here. So first thing is, what number do you want to wear at Penn State? I know you wore 13 in high school. Do you have one in mind? And then if you can't have that one, what's your backup plan?
13 would be cool. 3 would be cool, but I've been looking at the roster recently, actually. This is how excited I am to join the team. I've been looking at the roster, seeing like any holes for the numbers that they have. So I saw 9, I saw 34, I saw 52, which my dad wore, and I think 53. So honestly, any of those would be cool. I like single digits. I like 13, but it's not a big deal to me. Like, I'm going to make the number whatever I get, I'm going to make that number. So yeah, yes, sir.
So you mentioned your dad, Billy, played in the NFL. So does he ever throw on the film and show you, be like, no? I know he works with you all the time. I know he coaches you a lot, but does he ever, like, when you're kind of getting up on yourself, be like, hold on, and then throw on the film and show you, like, no, this is how you do it? Do you guys ever go back and forth on that?
I usually don't like brag about myself to my dad, and he really doesn't talk too much about his NFL days. I mean, a little bit as I've gotten older, but he's pretty humble. But I myself have gone to YouTube and have looked at his Duke games, have looked at his NFL games, and I found clips of him, and I just think that's so cool. Like, wow, that's my dad. Look at him. Look at him bringing ball carriers down with violence. Look at him getting interceptions. Look at the passion he plays with. That's one thing I notice whenever I watch him on YouTube. Like, and he's just always moving around. He's always pumping up his teammates. So that's something I look up to him for.
Is that inspirational for you to see things that you're capable of and to make you believe you can get to ultimately, which I imagine every player in your position wants to get to the NFL? Does that give you extra motivation knowing that your dad did it and you feel like you can do it?
Yeah, it's inspiring to me. I would love that for that to happen. I know he would be very proud, and I'm proud of him and everything he's accomplished. And so it would be really cool if I was able to get that opportunity as well.
So it seems like the two of you are really close. What's your relationship like?
Man, sometimes I get annoyed with him, to be honest, because he's always on me. But I really appreciate him. Don't get me wrong. He knows I love him, whether I say it a lot or not. He knows I love him. But he'll stick a protein shake in my face every morning. He'll give me my creatine. He'll give me my eggs, and like just making sure I'm on top of my nutrition. And when I was younger, like I don't mind it now. I actually like it. But he used to go, let's go to the gym. Let's go play basketball or go get a workout in. And I used to hate it, but I appreciate him just holding me accountable all these years. And he's so much a part of who I am today. And also just stuff that he's taught me growing up, like off the field stuff. He's a great dad. And you can see the way my older siblings have turned out and how I'm turning out. Like he's set a great example for us.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Max Granville, super excited to see your future unfold. And I know by the time this comes out, it will have started. Penn State training camp starting on the 31st. So I guess the last thing is, this whole conversation is an introduction to the Penn State fan base to get to know you a little bit better. So is there anything I should have asked you? And what do you want Penn State fans to know about you?
I want Penn State fans to know that I'm going to be all into the program. I'm going to be locked in. I'm going to do whatever I can to help y'all win Big Ten championships and national championships. I'm a Christian athlete. I'm a follower of Christ. Don't be afraid if you see me. Like I'm nice. So, I don't mind taking pictures or nothing like that. And I'm just really happy and humbled to be a part of a great university, a great team, and a great family of Nittany Lions. So we are.
Well said. Max, I'm very appreciative of your time today. Good luck with everything. Hope you have a successful first year at Penn State and beyond. And never be a stranger here. You're always welcome on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube show. So appreciate your time today. So that was Max Granville, and really impressive young man. And a lot of these Penn State players, when you talk to them, they are really impressive young men who have done a lot of things that most of us haven't been able to do, in terms of, this is a guy who's a top 100 athlete in his class, and also went through the work of being able to reclassify and having all of that done for, having all of that work done in the classroom in order to be in a situation like that. Kyle put this in the chat, and I just wanted to have kind of a post-interview recap here, get your thoughts and some of the things that I think stood out to me about that interview with Max Granville. The first is, Kyle points out he's wearing number 18. Close to 13. You change your number from your freshman year all the time anyway. Coin Intelligence Agency says this dude is a leader. I agree. I think, like, from a perspective angle and from a understands the assignment angle, he is absolutely on point. And that really, I think Hasaria brings up a good point here. And this is something I wanted to address in this part of the show. He says, I wonder if it's good for these kids to keep leaving high school earlier and earlier. And yeah, there is a certain risk of somebody who is making this transition so quickly. We've even seen guys leave for the NFL when they're 20 years old or 19, depending on like how schooling, and you have to be 3 years out of high school, and however that works out. Sometimes you're there too early and the competition level is too high. You're not mature enough for the game to be as good as you need to be. There's a lot of different things, but when you listen to what he says, he's planning on using this year the right way. Going back to, he's a leader, and this is somebody who, if it's going to work out for a player, I feel like Max Granville is the guy who can make it work, because he's focused on the right things. He's focused on getting bigger, getting stronger, and learning how to play the position better so that in 2025, he's ready to be competitive on the football field with his teammates. And it is interesting the way he talks about his football career. First off, his obsession with the game is awesome from somebody who feels the same way about it, where you can have those conversations about he's daydreaming about getting on the practice dummies and practicing his pass rushing moves and learning from Deion Barnes and being in the cold tub and having the nutrition program. Those little details his actions are speaking louder than his words. So a lot of guys come into college from their high school, and they're talking about the NFL. And they're talking about, Noah Cain, for the next 3 years, I'm going to be at Penn State and then go to the NFL. And, that conversation of the presumption that it's going to work out that way for you, instead of the process leading to that result. So without talking about the NFL, and even when I brought it up in kind of an oblique sense, He said, that'd be great if that happened someday. That would be, I'd be proud. My dad would be proud, all of those things. But everything he says to me, says I'm going to the NFL and I'm doing everything in my power right now to make that reality when it happens. Because the process is what gets you there, not just saying you're going to get there, not being a recruit of his level, who is unbelievably talented. And some of the things you saw in his highlight film, this is a guy who somebody said Chop Jr., Frack the Hunter says baby Chop. In a lot of ways, yes. And there's a lot of parts of his game that are very similar, from that first step, the explosiveness, the size even. But what I love about the conversation is he has again, larger picture about having a complete game. So he talks about playing with leverage, playing with pad level, his hand usage in the run game, being physically dominant and strong, and understanding he's got to get bigger in order to do those things. Like, he gets it. He gets all of the steps on the way to being what he wants, not just wanting it and hoping it comes true. Having an NFL father, having that process oriented of here's how you get to the NFL, here's how the business works, is always helpful. But even then, guys don't make it. So, he's got to have the talent, and he's got to have all of these things have to work out. So there are some conversations around him about his size, the conversation about him playing linebacker instead of defensive end. He does have to get bigger. He has to be the right-sized player to have all of those dreams come true. Penn State has produced guys of his size that go to the NFL, even in the first round. And you look at him, you just looked at him for 20 minutes. The thing that stuck out to me is he is skinny for 225 pounds on his frame. And that's not a surprise, given that Penn State is super confident about him playing defensive end. But that's one of those things you're looking for of, he has been in a semi-professional weight room environment his whole career because his dad is a professional athlete. He went to a school where the head coach was a professional football player. So it's all around him that he would have the understanding of how to get these things done. And at 225 pounds, he's an amazing athlete. His testing numbers are just like, looking at him on film and watching the way he runs, it's crazy. And yet you feel confident he can get to 250 just by, the frame and the development size that he has on him. I want to get to a couple of the other things here in the chat. From Mac the Mustard Man, he points this out. He says, Friel, T. Frank's polo collection is fire. Yeah. If you want to be like me, make sure you go to the Old Navy collection and you get it during the season transition sale, where you can get one of these bad boys for like $4. I rotate through like 6 polos. I'm glad somebody has finally pointed it out, because I've been sitting up here feeling like a fraud for 2 straight years. I just can't bring myself to wear a shirt without a collar when I'm on air. I used to go to football games in a suit and tie to be on the radio. So I just want you to know, this is the evolution of T. Frank embracing the media culture of wear a sweatshirt and jeans to your work environment. I'm always up here aiming for, dress for the job you want. And apparently the job I want now is boat deck crewmate. Somebody on a pleasure cruise. So I don't know who wears polos that are mint green. I'm getting a boat vibe from this look. Anyway, before I say anything else that's patently ridiculous, let's end the show. Coming up tonight, we have Penn State practice. We'll have a review of practice with Sean Fitz on the recruiting show tomorrow. Ryan is on vacation, so Fitz and I will be handling recruiting, talking about the major developments. There's a couple of decisions over the next couple of days that Penn State is going to be a part of. Kobe Howard coming up this weekend. He's moved up his announcement date, the receiver from 2025. That's coming up this weekend. That news broke last night. We'll be talking about that and much more on BWI Live, which is tomorrow, same time, 10 a.m. We'll talk to you then.